everybody, Randy Patterson here again, and I have another goodie for you. And you know me, I love turning you guys on to new bands. This band's not new. They've been around for a few years, but they have their debut album out finally. And it's what I would call perhaps a super group, because super groups, as you know, are made up of people who come from other bands to make up this one big super group band. That's the name, super group. This band was headed up by Greg T. Walker, who was with Blackfoot, the original bassist for Blackfoot, and he was in Leonard Skinner for a while. And you know we love Blackfoot and Leonard Skinner. Also in there is an old friend of Boomerocity's, Chris Bell. We interviewed him way back when he came out with his first debut album, and you know him through his work in rock and roll, especially in the Nashville area. And their drummer is Rusty Valentine, but who I got to talk to today, and you're going to love this chat, is blues great Lance Lopez. We talked to him about a year and a half ago when he came out with his Trouble Is Good LP, and it was good to see his face and hear his voice again. And he's a key, integral part of this great band, Two Wolves, and now you know why I call it a super group. Well, their self-titled debut album is coming out. And I got to talk with Lance about the album. It's hitting first week of June 2025, depending on when you're hearing and seeing this interview. And we had a fun time catching up and talking about how the whole group and the band came together, the album, all that kind of stuff. And he's got some great stories in there. We also talk about the late, great Joe Louis Walker, who died recently. So while you're listening, as I always ask, please hit like, please hit subscribe if you're not already a subscriber, and you already know it's not going to cost you anything. And please share this interview if you have friends who are rock and roll lovers, blues lovers, Leonard Skinner, Blackfoot lovers, just, you know, Lance Lopez fans, Chris Bell fans. Hey, just if people who love great music, share this interview with them. And so without any further ado, here's my latest interview with our good friend Lance Lopez. Until next time, this is Randy Patterson with Boomerocity. Take care. Hello, Lance.
Randy, how you doing, buddy?
Doing great. It's been a while. It's been almost 2 years. Did I say something to hack you off or what?
Man, Randy, I just can't take it anymore, Randy. It's not you, it's me.
I'm used to only hearing women tell me that. So.
Yeah, none of my material's original.
Yeah, well, neither is mine. So.
Oh boy. Oh my God.
Where you clicking in from? Nashville?
Yeah, I'm in Nashville now. Yep.
Hmm.
Still here. Still here.
Yep.
6 years later.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm a little bit outside of town now, though. I've gone. I'm enjoying quiet country life out here in Cheatham County.
Oh, okay.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think, gosh, it's been, I guess I was already moved back here. I was working in Nashville for a while, not quite a year, and then the pandemic hit and they had us working remotely, and you know, I've
Right.
retired since then, but it's been a while since I've been back to visit. It's been probably about 2 years now, and I miss it. I'm sure it's completely changed with all the construction going on there.
Yeah, a lot of people have come here. A lot of people came during the pandemic, and I mean, right after I got here, because I moved right at the end of 18, so I was here. I got to enjoy probably May, just about a year or a little bit less right before the pandemic hit. So I was right
Yeah.
here, right when everything happened. So a lot of people came since then, but yeah, everything seems to be cool now, though. So all
Yeah.
good.
Well, it's always fun to go there, man. I've been to a few concerts since the pandemic lifted, and then, but I'm caregiving. I'm a caregiver to my dad now, so I'm pretty anchored here in the Smoky Mountains for the time being. So
Oh man, that's my favorite part of the world out there, man. I love the Smokies. I just got back. Well, I was just in Europe. I just got back 2 days ago. But right the weekend before I left for the tour, I was in Gatlinburg, which is
no,
that whole area, man. Outside, out. Of course, you have the strip and the inside town and all
Hmm.
the whole thing. But outside there, that's like my spiritual home, one of my spiritual homes, man. Just out there in the Smokies and the green and the mountains and the cool water, and as long as
Yep.
there's not too many bears around, we're good.
I haven't even seen one yet since they've come out of
Really?
hibernation. I'm surprised. I mean,
Oh
normally
man.
I've got security cameras all around here, and
Yeah.
I almost always catch them on camera, during the night or something. The only thing I've caught so far is a deer, and
Wow.
but I'm sure I'll see plenty of them before the season's over. But I love seeing
Yeah.
them. I just stay away from them. Let them have their space.
Exactly.
But I'm just a
Exactly.
couple miles up the road from Dollywood's to give you an idea of where I'm at. So.
I love it. I was just there, man. I love it.
Well,
I
next
love it
time
out
you're
there.
around, let's have lunch or something, okay?
For sure. For sure.
All right, sounds
Absolutely.
good. Well,
Yeah.
Matt, before we get on to this Two Wolf album, I want to ask you when we talked last, you had just released or about to release Trouble is Good. How'd that album do for you?
It did fairly well. We're kind of finishing up the last legs of the tour of it. Matter of
Good.
fact, it's just what I just kind of got home from. So
Hmm.
we toured all the way up until last weekend, and
Wow.
we're still doing our regional touring and are still, we're back to kind of our regional thing. But we did some touring, and that was kind of the first touring I've done since the pandemic. So and it was nice to see, every time we put a record out like that, it's always nice to see what will translate live and what won't. Because some of the
Yeah.
stuff that we do in the studio doesn't is not, going out as a power trio, a lot of songs can't translate because we do a lot of stuff in the studio
Right.
that doesn't happen in the three-piece band. So it's always fun to see which songs make it and which songs don't, which ones evolve on stage and which ones stay in the midst of kind of the greatest hits of the set list, and what worked the
Hmm.
best live. Now the lead singles aren't always the ones that make it live. It's usually some of
Yeah.
the other cuts that make it. So we had a lot of fun doing that and watching the songs evolve on stage. So yeah, I got a great Nashville-based power trio here.
Good deal.
Got a guy named Logan Greason playing Thunderbird bass with me, and a drummer named Tommy Del Rossi plays downtown a lot. He's a Broadway guy. But he's a blues guy. He's from
Yeah.
New England, so he's raised in the blues. And Logan kind of comes more from a stoner metal background. So it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun taking the high energy stuff in. So we toured Europe, the last half of 24. So we're now getting ready to go back in the studio and start working on another record. We just got back from Montreux, Switzerland. We did the Montreux
Oh, I
guitar
love that
show.
there. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we did Montreux, and so we recorded it and filmed it. So there should be
Cool.
a
All
live
right.
offering coming from that.
Well, when it gets close to release time, let's talk again, okay? And because I'd love to
Absolutely,
plug it. So,
absolutely.
one other question off topic. Recently Joe Louis Walker died. Did you know Joe?
I did. I knew Joe well. Really sad about hearing about Joe Louis Walker. I met Joe in 1997 in Corsica, Corsica,
Hmm.
which the island of Corsica in the Mediterranean. And oddly enough, I was playing guitar with Lucky Peterson. Oddly enough, his mother had passed away the night before, and so
Oh,
Lucky finished out that commitment. We flew from Paris to Corsica. Lucky played that festival, and then we flew back to Paris, and Lucky flew home, and the band stayed in France. We were in the middle of a huge tour, and they moved a bunch of dates around so Lucky could fly home and attend the services for his mother. But that on that show, I met Joe Louis Walker, and Joe was full of nothing but praise. I mean, he stood on the side of the stage and watched me play with Lucky, and he remembered that. Joe remembered that meeting
wow.
almost more than I remembered it. When Joe and I reconnected years later, he remembered, and then it was one of those moments where I went, "Oh wow, that is when that happened," and he recalled it very detailed. His memory was pretty incredible of it, and Yeah, and so I saw him. We did a blues festival up in Michigan together when I was on with Supersonic Blues Machine, and
Hmm.
then just this past September, um, he was at the Muriel Blues Festival in France, and he played the day before I did, and I was hoping to be there. We flew in that night, and I was hoping to be there to see him play, and wasn't able to. And I was really bummed out about it. And I really wanted to reconnect and see Joe at the festival. That like I said, he played the day before us. And but when I saw footage of Joe from the festival, I knew something was. I had a feeling, and I thought, man, is Joe okay? And then
Mm.
now to see that he passed away really was saddening. But I love Joe. He's a great player. He was a good friend. He was always supportive, and he was always just over the top with praise for me and my playing. So nothing but love for Joe Louis Walker. What a
Yeah.
tragic loss.
Yeah, I was surprised, oddly enough, and I'm not just saying this, he had been on my mind. It'd been, gosh, I don't know, 3 years since I'd talked to him last, maybe four. And I always loved his work, and I thought, man, I wonder if he's doing anything new, and so I can interview him again. And I kind of
Yeah,
let it slide, and then a couple weeks later, he
yeah,
passes. But so what I'm
right.
doing, just so you know, I've interviewed him twice. The first time
Hmm.
was over the phone, and I put that chat to a slideshow. And then this last time I interviewed him was during the pandemic, and it was the whole thing with the whole ruckus over Eric Clapton's comments and all that were coming out. And I've got that on video, and so I'm putting both of those out onto my YouTube and podcast channels so that people, just to come to commemorate his what little bit of contact I had with him, because I just loved the guy. I mean, and so easy to talk to, so easy to
Did
talk
I? Did
to.
I? I'm sorry. I don't mean to cut you off. But did I miss something with Clapton?
Well, well, there
What?
was there was two things going on with Clapton. One was there was some old comments that were during his using days that he made about blacks.
Oh
So there
yeah, yeah.
was that,
Okay.
and then also he was kind of anti-vax.
Right.
He and Van Morrison were making the news over their anti-vax because he had taken the vaccine, and he had some muscular issues where it was hard for him to play. And so those two things were kind of hot and heavy in the news, and
Right.
somehow or other we got on that topic, and Joe Louis had a lot to say about it. So,
Wow.
and I
Wow.
left it all in there. I mean, nothing offensive. It was fascinating to listen to him talk about it all and just his insights on it. So
Yeah.
it'll post this afternoon after it'll be up by 2:05 your time. I'm
Okay.
Eastern, so it'll be around 2:05 your time. You should be able to
Okay.
see both interviews
Interesting.
out there. But the last one is
Awesome.
one where he makes those comments. But
Okay.
well, man,
Okay.
I love this album, this Two Wolf album, man. Tell me about it.
Thanks. Well, Randy, it's been a long time coming
Hmm.
with this project, and it had been a long time coming. Let me just tell you. Um, and let me just give you a little backstory, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go right ahead.
I, I met Greg T. Walker,
Hmm.
who was the original bass player of Blackfoot,
Right.
and through Tommy Curiali, who was the former drummer of Johnny Winter and Rick Derringer. I'd
Hmm.
known Tommy since his days with Rick Derringer way back. And about 6 months after Johnny Winter died, now we had been on tour with Johnny Winter together. And then Tommy and I had a long-standing friendship, like I said again, back to the Rick Derringer days,
Hmm.
And so Tommy and I had gone way back. We had a very long friendship, and so 6 months after Johnny died, we were all still grieving. Tommy called me and said that Greg T. Walker was forming a new band, would I be interested in it? And I went, oh my God, like Train and Highway Song. And I was already friends with Ricky Medlock. You know,
Hmm.
I had met Ricky Medlock years ago. A friend of mine had brought Ricky out to see me play um, in New York City when Skinner was playing Madison Square Garden with Kid Rock, and I was playing at BB King's Club, and
Hmm.
then I'd done some opening spots for Skinner, and so Ricky and I were already friends, so I was very familiar with Blackfoot and grew up with those records and was highly influenced by that. So when Tommy Curiali called me, I was into it. So I flew down to Florida. We began working on trying to put a band together. Um, I was also trying to secure some sort of a deal for the band. But at the
I
same
can't
time,
hear
I
you.
was on.
Hold on.
Uh,
There you go. I got you now.
okay, at the same time, I
Nope.
was.
It's cutting in and out.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know. I've got all the bars I
Okay.
need on this.
Okay. I hear you now.
Can you?
And I
Okay.
hopefully, if it happens again, I'll take my earpiece out and put you on my speaker, and I'll edit any loop that happens there later. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's all good. Can you hear me now? Is this good?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Anyway, so Tommy Curiali called me to come to play with Two Wolf to start the band. I started flying to Florida and working with Greg T. Walker,
Hmm.
and at the same time, I was in a band called Supersonic Blues Machine
Right.
in Los Angeles that kind of got busy very quickly, and Billy Gibbons and Steve Lukather and Robin Ford and a lot of other great people were in the band. So I had to kind of choose between the two. So I left, and the replacement that came in to replace me was a guy named Chris Bell, who's in the band currently, who was working with Bo Bice from American Idol.
Right.
So during the pandemic, right at the beginning of the pandemic, I had to leave, go back with Supersonic. So during the pandemic, and a little bit before that, let me back up. Phil McCormick from Molly Hatchet passed away, and Phil was a really good friend of mine. He was the lead singer of Molly Hatchet. And so that's what reconnected me with Greg. I called Greg and said, hey, man, sad to hear about Phil. And he was like, yeah. And he goes, and if you ever want to do some playing again, let me know. And I'd been out of Supersonic for about a year and a half, almost 2 years at that point. And I said, I'd be into it. And then and right at the beginning of the pandemic, we were making plans to join up, and then COVID hit. So it really kind of began then. Chris Bell and I met. We started getting together at my house in Nashville and writing songs during 2020, and then we finally when took the stage again at the Rock Legends Cruise in 2022. It was our first time on stage together, and then immediately we went into working on the record. So during the time of Chris Bell and I getting together and just seeing how things would gel, we got together, and we had it was COVID era, so I was living in a house in Lenox Village, just north of Brentwood, and in the
Right.
Lenox Village area in Nashville, and we had full Marshall stacks set up in the living room. so so we had Marshall stacks everywhere, and Chris and I just got over there and plugged in our Les Pauls and started jamming, and we started jamming a lot of the old Blackfoot material. We started, and then immediately we got around the fireplace. He would come over and we'd get around and we'd light a fire, and the pandemic was happening. Everything was just bleak. So we lit a fire and got the acoustic guitars out and started writing songs. And it was a good combination immediately. So when we hit the stage finally at the Rock Legends Cruise 2 years later, we were like, we have a serious band. And Greg T. Walker was immediately pleased that he found the lineup that he'd always been searching
Yeah.
for Two Wolf. So I met a young lady by the name of Nettie Freed, whose grandfather was Alan Freed, who
Oh,
coined the term rock and roll.
right.
Her grandfather actually invented the word.
How cool.
So Nettie and I became fast friends, and Nettie, oh, I had built a studio. I went there. A friend of mine, Eddie Haddad, who used to play guitar with Eddie Money, was unveiling a pedal. He had designed a pedal for his guitar, and he was unveiling it at her studio. And so I went and I met Nettie, and then they had a house attached to the studio. And Nettie and I were like instant, soulmates. We were like, oh my God, where have you been all my life? She grew up in California around big rock stars, and
Hmm.
we just hugged up, and we were just instant big buddies. And then there was a house connected on the property it was a residential place, and I looked immediately and went, oh my God, this is the perfect setting for Two Wolf to begin working on a record. And because the guys can come up from North Florida, Chris and I were in Nashville. So the band, Greg and Rusty were in North Florida. So those guys could come up and stay at the house. So we could all go out there and stay at the house and continue to write music and work.
Hmm.
So that's what we did. Nettie worked a very special deal for us, and we came out and we lived in that house on the property, and we went right next door to the studio, and we had the good fortune of she introduced us to Chris Justice. We had the good fortune of meeting Chris Justice, who was also from LA and an LA rock guy. And I
Hmm.
thought for this record, we needed, somebody that understood heavy rock guitars, big drums, etc. And Nashville kind of has their way of doing things, and I knew that we needed to kind of find a fine line in the middle. We didn't want to sound like a new kind of Nashville band, but we also needed somebody that knew how to record big, loud Marshalls, get big
Yeah.
drum sounds, and make a big sounding record. And so Nettie was very, very confident that Chris would be the guy, and he was. So after almost 2 years of recording, here it is. It's finally coming out. So we're really pleased with the record. Chris and I wrote some songs. There's some of my old originals from my back catalog, a lot of Chris Bell material. He's a great songwriter. He's really got the
Hmm.
modern sensibility. And then we reached back for some of Greg's deep cuts with Blackfoot, and
Hmm.
we're really excited about this collection of songs and the way that they came out. And it's like finally after all these years, here we are.
Well, last night I dropped John Lappin a note because I was getting ready for today. And I mean, I caught your name right away and Greg's, when John first sent me the stuff. But then last night, reading back through it and, looking up tape and all that, realized Chris was in the band. I interviewed Chris early in Boomerocity's existence back in 2012 when he came out with his first solo album. And we had kept in touch for a while. And then when I was working in Nashville, I was hoping to try to catch some of his gigs. Then the pandemic hit, and I was thrilled to see that you guys were working together. I didn't know you guys were such good friends. Please tell him I said hello if he remembers
Absolutely.
me. And he and I need to talk again because I loved his work, man. He was great,
Chris
fantastic.
is a
But
Chris is a great writer. I mean, we have good chemistry on stage, and we have fun playing together, and we always have fun, working out all the old school Blackfoot unison guitar lines and stuff that Charlie Hargret and Ricky Medlock did back in the late '70s and early '80s on the Blackfoot records. But we really our real bond was songwriting together. Chris is a great lyricist, and his vocal approach is that of more modern rock era,
mhm.
and he has an ability to put that modern rock sensibility into the writing. So that's one thing that I love about working with Chris. We have a really good songwriting chemistry.
That and it's funny you say that because that was going to be my next question: is what is the chemistry like with all you guys in this band? Because you come from, you know, different, not different directions so much, but you all had your own careers and such. And I was just curious how that chemistry was. It's great with you and Chris. How is it with you two and the rest of the band, the other two guys?
Well, I had played with Greg or in the first version of Two Wolf, with Tommy Curiali, and there was another guitar player from Daytona Beach area in Florida. That was a more of a shredder kind of Satriani Vi kind of player, and we had a little bit of trying to get in the box and get the chemistry. Chris and I have a lot of the same influences. We came up on all the same music. We grew up in the same era. We're close in the
Hmm.
same age, so we kind of grew up with all the same influences and the same listen to the same style of music. And so and we love the same guitars, the same amp setups, the classic stuff. So it was really that chemistry was there. And so when I left Two Wolf, the original version in 20, I guess I want to say 2016. I think it was 15 or six. I think it was 15. I can't remember, 15 or 16. Early in the band, like I maybe was in the band maybe a year, less than a year to go to finalize my time with Supersonic. Chris replaced me, so I think Greg kind of realized then if he could just have the band with me and Chris, it would be perfect. So I already knew that Greg and I had a chemistry, and Greg knew that he and Chris had a chemistry. So I think all of us combined would be the right move. Now, one of the things about putting the band together again is originally um, Greg and I both were talking to my good friend Simon Wright, who Simon was in AC/DC and also
Oh
Dio.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I had grown up seeing Simon play in AC/DC in the 80s as a child. And then we became very good friends in LA. Simon and I became good friends, and Simon left AC/DC and joined Dio's band, and then continued pretty much on to the end of Dio's career with him. And and Greg and Simon were good friends, and so originally me rejoining the band was going to be Simon playing drums. Well, logistically, it was going to be a little difficult. Simon's in LA, I'm in Nashville, Greg's in North Florida. Well, Chris and I both were in Nashville. So we were trying to
right.
figure out logistics, and it got to be a little bit difficult. And, Simon had a lot of the Dio tribute projects happening that he was becoming very busy with, and amongst other things in LA. They had played with Rusty Valentine, who had also worked with Charlie Hargrave, primarily, who was the other original guitar player in Blackfoot and
Hmm.
around North Florida. And so Rusty kind of came from that. He kind of came from the North Florida rock scene around Gainesville and kind of the college, Gainesville being the
Yeah.
college town that it is, and having great musicians like Tom Petty and Don Felder and all these other great guys
Hmm.
come out of there. It was always such a great rock area. So Rusty kind of came from that Gainesville rock scene. So and he had actually played with the version of Tua in the past. And so Rusty came back to play drums in this, and it was just an easy fit. And as soon as we all got in the room together, it was immediately, we knew the chemistry was there. Again,
Yeah.
Rusty kind of being from, and Chris and I being from that generation, a little bit behind, or a little bit behind Greg. Um, Greg being a couple of generations ahead of us, we kind of had our chemistry. So again,
Right.
we kind of all grew up in the same area, same influences, and the same stuff. So we all bonded together pretty amazingly. That's why once we knew that it worked well on stage, and we went out and we got the reactions that we did at the Rock Legends cruise. I think we went out with Deep Purple. We were on the boat with Deep Purple and a couple of other great bands that year. And Deep Purple all came to see us, and Roger Glover and Ian Pace and all the guys from Deep
Hmm.
Purple. As one of my best friends, Simon McBride, had just joined the band.
Hmm.
They all came to see us, and they were blown away. And that's when we went, okay, we've got a serious band. If Deep Purple came to see us and they're blown away, it's time to go home
Yeah.
and make a record.
That's right. So
So
what was I think you explained a lot of differences on how to put this out, how this album came together. What was probably one or two of the biggest surprises you experienced in putting this album together?
um, surprise wise, I think that um, just how well everything translated to the record. I think that how we came out sonically on the record was, it's always one thing to play live and know you have great energy in a live setting, and it's another to take the band into a studio and be a great band together. And because you can be great on stage and not, there's a difference between being a recording artist and a performer.
Right.
And then the magic really is how do we take the performer into the recording artist mode and capture
And
what the
capturing.
magic.
Yep.
Yeah. And I really truly feel like we did that, and we also had the ability to play these songs live so many times, on the Rock Legends cruise, and had been rehearsing so much with a lot of this material that I kind of felt that. But then to sit at the console and hear it come back through the speakers and go, yes, we captured it, as opposed, because you never, there's always that gambling moment where you're like, oh man, it was so great in the room, or oh man, it was so great on stage, and then you're like, huh, and kind of have that feeling of, well, it's good, but we're just not capturing what it was coming from the stage. With this record, that was one of the great surprises. That came out, particularly in the cut, "The Diary of the Working Man," which is a deep cut, a deep cut from Blackfoot. I was really, really amazed and surprised how well that one especially came out. So it's really nice to see. You can think it in your mind, but then when your vision comes out and when you see it really take life, that was the best, always the best benefits of doing it.
As a fan, because I'm not a musician, I always find it interesting that that and I don't know if you've experienced this because you're both a musician and a fan, where for me, I use Toto as an example. You mentioned Steve Lukather earlier. I think he holds the record of the guy I've interviewed the most. I think it's like 7 or 8 times. And,
Mhm.
love his work. And I told him, I said, to be honest, Luke, I said, I wasn't a Toto fan until I saw you guys in concert.
Right.
And to see them in concert, there's just something about their music that became much more alive to me. And then when I go back and listen to studio versions, then I hear it that way. And I don't know what it is about the human mind that does that. The other thing that's disappointing is when you hear a band live and then you pick up their record and it's kind of weak compared to their live performance. And so I've watched the video of you guys playing, Two Wolf, and I've heard the album. So I'm saying all that to say I agree with you, man. You guys, the transition was captured in both directions quite nicely.
Thanks,
So
Randy. Yeah, I really, I agree. I feel the same way. And that was, that was the kind of the make or break moment. Are we going to be able to capture this energy that we all have in the room and on the stage in the studio? And again, big shout out to Chris Justice, our engineer and producer at Spellbound, that really did help us in that regard.
mhm.
Capture a lot of that we wanted to have happen.
Yep. So out of all the songs on the album, which one would you point to as the calling card? Because you guys are going to conjure up some new fans here. And I'm
Oh
not,
man.
I'm not asking for your favorite. I'm asking for the calling card. I think there's a difference there.
Yeah, the calling card. I mean, to really, God, there's so many. Like you go, what is the signature sound of Two Wolf?
Hmm.
What is the sound of Two Wolf? And we had the ability to record, songs that were from my back catalog and from Chris's, songs that we had already written and then we brought to the table, and then we like made a Two Wolf version. We kind of Two Wolfized those songs. But then there was the original, and I really think "Blessed and the Cursed" is
Yeah.
the closer of the track. And that was a song that, Chris and I wrote at that house in Nashville, and on a, cold winter night around a fireplace with an acoustic guitar,
Hmm.
and to see it come to life from just of what it is. And one of the cool things about Blessed and the Cursed is that, Chris and I made a work tape of it. I made just an acoustic demo of me playing acoustic. I used a tuning that Jimmy Page used a lot, with dropping three strings down, well, two strings down to a lower tone to D, and it was kind of an open tuning. And I had actually been working on the riff of Blessed and the Curse when I first joined Two Wolf in 2015. I started working on it and just had really the intro and was like, I know this can go somewhere. And so when Chris and I immediately got together, I went and dusted off my ideas that I'd had originally when I was in the band. And I go, well, I got this. So when Chris and I sat down, it just didn't immediately float out, and Chris, and it goes, I have these lyrics, I have this melody idea, and we immediately went for it. And at first, Greg was kind of like, I don't know about this, but I played that demo for a very well-known big rock band here in Nashville that's very famous, and they wanted to record it immediately. And that's when I went, nope. I said,
Whoa, yeah.
Two Wolf is gonna keep this song because it's special and it really needs to be a sound. So again, like I said, some of those songs are, they go back over span over some time, and like I said, we have Blackfoot material, but I do believe that Blessed and the Curse is true Two Wolf, as is like Keep On Moving. I think Keep On Moving and Blessed and the Curse. And then to go back to the Diary thing again, which is a Blackfoot deep cut, it's still this version really was encapsulated into now a Two Wolf version. We added some different elements to it and definitely made it our own thing. I do believe, I mean, the original Blackfoot version is amazing, but I think what we did with that particular song really defines the band.
What's the advanced feedback like for you so far? I mean, I love it. I've heard the whole thing a couple times now, and John sent me the MP3s on it. I'm right there with it. What are you hearing from others?
Well, it's definitely, it's not too far out of the box as far as, out of my wheelhouse. It's heavy hard rock, southern rock music. It's not like I just went, hey, here's my hip hop album.
Thankfully.
Here's my Lance Lopez smooth jazz record. So it wasn't something where everybody's like, man, are you okay? It was like, it was a little bit more in the wheelhouse. It wasn't too far off the mark. So, and I think, people having known me and known that I was in and out of the project there for, it's been, a decade now, in and out of the band, and finally, solidifying the band together and getting a lineup together. I think it's kind of long awaited. So, and then, like you said, then it was the matter of, are these guys going to be able to translate the tape when they do live? And so I think that, not only did we feel it, but I think it's heard in the record. And that's those are the comments that I've definitely gotten. And everybody really thinks it's a very, very powerful album.
So what's on the band's radar for the rest of the year? I know you guys got a cruise coming up in February with Legends of Rock again, and impressive lineup on there too of other bands. You're in there with some more heavy hitters again. What else between now and then are you guys going to be doing?
Well, I think we have the album coming out, and I think our CD release party is going to be in Woodstock, Virginia, at the Southern Rock Woodstock up there, June 28th, I believe it is. It's in Woodstock, Virginia, at the and that's what it's called. You can just Google Southern Rock of Woodstock in Woodstock, Virginia. And that's going to be our album release party. And we're doing a series of concerts over the summer with those guys. They're doing one in Virginia, one I believe in Ohio, and one in North Carolina. So we're doing three of those this summer. We've also got some shows in upstate New York. So we're booking tour dates now. So we are putting that together on land because this band has only really done the Rock Legends cruise, which we go out for 3 days and we play with a lot of great musicians. And we've done some shows on land while we were preparing this, but it was really in preparation of this album where we're ready to then go, okay, here's a new record. Now let's go on the road and promote it. It was kind of the idea. So that's what we're going to be working on primarily is focus on the release of the record and then getting on the road and coming out and playing to fans that want to hear it. So, that's kind of the focus at this point.
Good deal. Well, man, I sure appreciate you taking the time to chat with me about this, Lance. Like I said, it's been a while, and like I also said, please tell Chris I said hello and drop me a note. He and I need to catch up. It's been way too long since he and I last spoke. So, but man, I love the sound. I think you guys are going to track very well with this, and I look forward to hearing a lot of good things about you guys and doing a lot of things. I think we're in for a lot of fun.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Randy. And I'll sure will tell Chris you said hello. And thank you so much for having me on the show once more.
Hey, my pleasure, man. We'll talk again soon, all right?
Okay. Take care, Randy.
All right, take care, buddy. Bye-bye.